peasant markets, and agroecological cooperatives. In several rural communities, farmers have been able to organize and create agroecological cooperatives that focus on selling their products directly to consumers in nearby cities. This initiative reduced the reliance on middlemen who often exploited the farmers and resulted in the producers receiving a fairer price for their goods. The cooperative was designed not only to streamline the distribution of products like vegetables, grains, and fruits, but also to ensure that profits were reinvested in environmental sustainability projects. Specifically, the cooperative began using a portion of its income to fund native forest conservation initiatives. Over time, the farmers adapted to urban demand fluctuations by diversifying their offerings to include dairy products, honey, preserves, and artisan goods. Additionally, producers received training in new farming techniques and market strategies. This allowed them to improve the quality of their products, strengthen their bargaining power in local markets, and enhance their overall livelihoods. The social aspect of this regenerative project cannot be overstated. By fostering collective action, the community was able to overcome economic hardships while actively participating in the protection of their local ecosystems. Moreover, the cooperative model empowered the community to establish a more resilient and equitable local economy. Therapeutic gardens and social support networks. In urban areas suffering from high levels of stress and social fragmentation, community groups have set up therapeutic gardens in public spaces, such as mental health centers, public housing projects, and community hubs. These gardens provide more than just food. They act as sanctuaries for healing, offering therapeutic benefits for individuals coping with mental health issues, such as anxiety and depression. These gardens became meeting places for local residents, where people could not only grow their own food but also build relationships of solidarity and mutual support. Healthcare professionals such as doctors, social workers, and occupational therapists collaborated with the community to adapt the design of these gardens to the specific needs of the population they served. For example, raised beds were introduced for elderly residents or individuals with mobility challenges, while sensory plants, like lavender or mint, were planted for their calming and aromatic properties. These gardens became centers of well-being, where food production, mental health care, and community integration all took place in a mutually beneficial environment. Over time, they became spaces that nurtured both the body and the soul, creating a sense of purpose and connection for the people who tended to them. Urban agriculture and social housing integration. In cities experiencing rapid urbanization, some social housing projects have begun integrating urban agriculture into their designs. By turning vacant lots or underutilized spaces into community gardens, these projects provide fresh, locally grown food to residents, especially in areas lacking access to healthy food options. In one project, residents of a low-income housing development collectively worked to transform an empty lot into a thriving vegetable garden. As a result, they were able to reduce their food costs, increase food security, and strengthen their sense of community. This project also encouraged the integration of sustainable building practices, such as the installation of rainwater collection systems and the use of composting toilets, all of which reduce the environmental footprint of the housing development. Over time, the garden became a symbol of resilience and community empowerment, demonstrating that even in the most urbanized and economically disadvantaged areas, ecological regeneration and social cohesion can go hand in hand. YouTube video, Why We Should Be Urban Farming, Waste-to-Energy and Community Resilience Projects. In some regions facing both waste management crises and energy scarcity, communities have implemented waste-to-energy projects that not only reduce waste, but also provide renewable energy sources. These projects involve the collection of organic waste from local households, which is then converted into biogas or compost. By establishing community-run composting centers or biogas plants, local governments and NGOs are working together to reduce landfill waste, mitigate harmful methane emissions, and create a new source of energy that is both sustainable and community-driven. For example, in one community, the biogas generated from food scraps was used to power streetlights and provide energy for community kitchens, allowing people to cook meals while reducing their reliance on fossil fuels. This initiative not only alleviates environmental issues, but also encourages community participation in waste management, fostering a deeper understanding of ecological systems and promoting environmental stewardship. Diagnostic and planning tools, analysis of zones and sectors. For a community to successfully engage in its regeneration plans, it is crucial to have accessible and practical methods for assessing the environment. One such method is the zone analysis, which helps design spaces according to the frequency and type of human activity in each area. The idea is that not all spaces are used equally, so their layout and function should reflect how often they need attention. Typically, the system divides the land into 5 concentric zones, ranging from Zone 0 to Zone 5. Zone 0 is the home or central hub of activity, where daily tasks such as cooking, eating, and resting occur. As you move outward, the zones are designated according to the intensity of use, with Zone 1 being a space for intensive gardening or small animals, while Zone 5 is a wilderness area left largely undisturbed for biodiversity conservation. This zoning approach helps optimize both time and energy. High-maintenance spaces like vegetable gardens or herb beds are positioned close to the home for easy access, while less frequently tended areas, such as reforestation projects or natural habitats, are placed in the outer zones, reducing human disturbance. By thoughtfully organizing the land this way, the community can create a more efficient, balanced, and sustainable environment that supports both human needs and ecological health. The sector analysis focuses on identifying and understanding the external factors that influence a site, such as the direction and strength of prevailing winds, the path of the sun throughout the day, the movement of local wildlife, and sources of noise or pollution. By systematically observing these factors, we can design systems that not only maximize positive environmental influences, but also minimize or mitigate negative ones. For instance, knowing the orientation of the sun allows for optimal placement of crops that require more sunlight, while shaded areas can be used for plants that thrive in cooler conditions. The prevailing winds can be harnessed to cool the space during summer or be blocked by windbreaks made from trees or shrubs to protect sensitive plants from cold winds during winter. Understanding rainwater flow and stormwater patterns allows us to design drainage systems or use rainwater harvesting methods, preventing flooding and ensuring water conservation. Additionally, by observing the movement of local fauna, such as migratory birds or pollinators, we can place habitats and corridors to enhance biodiversity and reduce disruptions to local ecosystems. This analysis creates a design that not only works with nature's forces, but also helps in creating a resilient and sustainable system that adapts to its environment. When these two tools are combined, the community gains a clear view of how its immediate environment is structured, what ecological and social processes are triggered in each area, and how external forces interact with the project. The information collected is captured in maps or diagrams that facilitate communication and decision-making. Likewise, community meetings to prepare these analyses are a perfect opportunity to strengthen social cohesion, since each person can contribute their knowledge about a sector or suggest ideas to improve interaction with the environment. Once the diagnosis is completed, planning begins. Designing where the gardens, meeting places, composting areas, water collection systems, and any other infrastructure that the project requires will be located. Again, the principle of integration suggests that each element fulfills more than one function. A rainwater pond, for example, can serve as a reservoir for irrigation, a shelter for birds, and a space for contemplation for participants. A composting area can function not only as a waste recycling station, but also as a natural fertilizer for the soil, a habitat for beneficial insects, and a learning space for community members about sustainable practices. Similarly, a greenhouse can provide a controlled environment for growing vegetables, but it can also serve as a space for educational workshops or a refuge for sensitive plants during extreme weather. Another example is the use of hedgerows. Not only do they provide a natural barrier against wind and soil erosion, but they also act as habitats for wildlife, improve biodiversity, and even function as edible landscapes, with some species offering fruits or herbs for consumption. An outdoor meeting area could be designed with seating made from recycled materials, which also acts as an educational tool, showcasing the possibility of reusing and upcycling waste. Even an area designated for growing medicinal plants can also serve as a healing space, offering restorative benefits for both physical health and community well-being. Adaptation, for its part, requires continuing to evaluate the results after months or years, adjusting the arrangement of the elements if circumstances change or if new needs are discovered. In summary, grounding regeneration in communities with innovative action plans involves recognizing the complexity of ecological and social relationships and articulating them in a design process that is not limited to the imposition of isolated techniques or structures. The principle of integration and adaptation inspires the conception of projects capable of simultaneously nurturing biodiversity, the local economy, and social cohesion, while the use of tools such as zone analysis and sector analysis provides a rigorous approach to study and take advantage of the characteristics of each territory. 2.4 Shorten supply chains and increase transparency and trust. Integrate principles of permaculture to regenerate the soil under our feet. Key principles of rebuilding the building block of life. In recent decades, supply chains have become progressively longer and more complex, to the point that many consumers are unaware of the true origin of the food they eat every day. For instance, a simple apple that appears on a supermarket shelf may have traveled thousands of miles before reaching the consumer's hands. It may have been grown in a distant country, harvested by seasonal workers, stored in large warehouses, transported via trucks, ships, or even planes, and then packaged and labeled before finally reaching the consumer. Along the way, the environmental impact accumulates, such as the carbon emissions from transportation, the use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides during production, and the energy consumed in packaging and storage. Moreover, this process is often invisible to the consumer, who typically knows only the brand and the price, but not the ecological and social costs that have contributed to that apple's journey. The workers involved in each stage of production may face poor working conditions, long hours, and low wages, all of which are hidden from the consumer's view. In some cases, local farmers in the area where the apple is grown may struggle to compete with the large-scale operations required to meet global demand, leading to the decline of local agriculture and the loss of traditional farming knowledge. The complexity of this globalized system fosters disconnection from the land and the people who produce the food, reinforcing unsustainable patterns of consumption and undermining the resilience of local food systems. This disconnection not only makes products more expensive and reduces transparency around their production conditions, but also increases the environmental impact and makes land regeneration more difficult. The longer and more complex the supply chain, the greater the ecological cost, from fossil fuel consumption to soil degradation and the depletion of biodiversity. Additionally, as more land is dedicated to mass production, often under monoculture farming practices, the land becomes increasingly depleted, making it harder for future generations to restore ecosystems and ensure long-term food security. Faced with this panorama, permaculture proposes a radical rethinking, shortened supply chains, returning a leading role to both the producer and the consumer, while simultaneously promoting efficient resource management. By focusing on local food production systems where communities are more involved in growing and sourcing their food, permaculture advocates for a more transparent, sustainable approach to consumption. Not only does this help reduce the carbon footprint associated with long-distance transportation, but it also encourages more responsible farming practices, such as using organic methods, enhancing soil health, and preserving biodiversity. In this way, permaculture aims to reconnect people with the land, regenerate ecosystems, and create food systems that are resilient, equitable, and sustainable for future generations. At the core of this change is the premise that the more direct and local the link between those who produce and those who consume, the greater the transparency, the trust, and the shared responsibility. Efficient resource management, one of the fundamental principles of permaculture, applies not only to agricultural production, but also to the distribution and consumption of goods. When we talk about food, reducing the distance between the field and the table brings multiple ecological and social benefits. The carbon footprint associated with the transportation of goods is reduced, the traceability of each product is facilitated, and most importantly, the value of nearby soils is recovered as the basis of food sovereignty. The importance of soils in regeneration and food sovereignty. The idea of rebuilding the fundamental block of life refers directly to soil regeneration, an often overlooked yet crucial aspect of sustainability. For much of modern history, soil was seen simply as a medium for growing plants, without recognition of its complexity and vital role as a carbon sink, biodiversity reservoir, and source of nutrients. This shift in perspective occurred alongside the rise of industrial agriculture in the mid-20th century. The Green Revolution, fueled by synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and monoculture farming, prioritized increasing yields to feed a growing population. Policymakers, especially in the US and Europe, heavily subsidized large-scale farming practices, focusing on short-term productivity rather than long-term soil health. However, industrial agriculture's focus on efficiency came at a cost. Monocultures, along with the overuse of chemicals, stripped the soil of vital nutrients, leading to erosion, loss of fertility, and reduced biodiversity. This degradation made crops more vulnerable to pests and diseases, creating a vicious cycle that demanded more chemical inputs while continuing to degrade the land. Politically, this model was driven by the belief that technological advancements would ensure food security, but it ignored the broader environmental consequences. The resulting damage from industrial agricultural practices is clear: depleted soil, increased vulnerability to climate change, and widening social and environmental inequalities. With the global population projected to exceed 9 billion by 2050, the pressure on food production systems is immense. Unsustainable agricultural practices reliant on monocultures and chemical inputs have already led to significant soil degradation, which not only decreases crop yields and food quality, but also weakens the resilience of agricultural systems in the face of climate change. As soils lose their ability to retain moisture and provide essential nutrients, crops become more vulnerable to pests and extreme weather, threatening food security. Soil regeneration has emerged as a crucial solution to restore agricultural resilience. Recognizing soil's vital role as a carbon sink, biodiversity reservoir, and nutrient provider is essential to shifting towards regenerative practices such as crop rotation, agroecology, and organic farming. These methods restore soil health, reduce chemical dependence, and create sustainable long-term food systems. Soil regeneration is not just an ecological concern, it is a political and economic imperative. In the context of rapid population growth and the increasing pressure on food systems, regenerative practices offer a path to ensuring food security and a resilient agricultural future for generations to come. Permaculture, like agroecology and other related currents, emphasizes the need to take care of the soil as a living and dynamic entity. Under the principle of resource and efficiency management, one of the first steps to reverse degradation is close cycles that were previously linear. The aim is for organic waste to return to the earth in the form of nutrients, and for food to be consumed close to where it is produced, avoiding the use of fossil fuels in long-distance transport. So the soil benefits from the returns of organic matter, and the local community strengthens its food security. Composting and soil regeneration. One of the simplest and most transformative tools to revitalize soil is composting, a practice that exemplifies the principle of resource management and efficiency by converting waste, food remains, leaves, prunings, into a valuable natural fertilizer. From the perspective of permaculture, composting can be carried out on any scale, From the small container on an urban balcony to large community composters that manage the organic waste of a neighborhood, the benefits for the soil are multiple. Improves soil structure and water retention capacity. Compost acts as an organic amendment, promoting the formation of soil aggregates, structures that improve stability and avoid compaction. A soil with good structure facilitates root penetration and water infiltration, reducing erosion and increasing water retention capacity. Studies have shown that soils with high organic matter content can retain up to 20 times its weight in water, which makes them more resilient to droughts and extreme rains, provides diversity of microorganisms essential for soil life. Composted organic matter is a habitat for a diverse microbial community, including nitrogen-fixing bacteria, such as those of the genus Rhizobium, decomposer fungi, such as Trichoderma and mycorrhizae, actinobacteria, and protozoa. These microorganisms play a key role in the nutrient cycle, facilitating the gradual release of essential elements such as nitrogen, N, phosphorus, P, and potassium, K, in addition to improving symbiosis with plant roots, reduces the need for chemical fertilizers, and improves soil fertility. The decomposition of compost generates humus, a substance rich in humic and fulvic acids that increase the availability of nutrients. This reduces dependence on synthetic fertilizers, excesses of which can cause nitrate contamination in water sources and soil degradation. Soil with sufficient organic matter also acts as a carbon sink, helping to mitigate climate change by capturing atmospheric CO2, reduces greenhouse gas emissions and organic waste. When organic waste ends up in landfills, it decomposes anaerobically, generating large amounts of methane, CH4, a gas with a global warming potential 25 times greater than CO2. Instead, aerobic composting primarily releases carbon dioxide and water vapor, minimizing environmental impact. According to the FAO, if half of the global organic waste were composted, it could be reduced up to 1.3 gigatons of CO2 equivalent per year. Promotes carbon sequestration and combats desertification. A soil with high levels of organic matter houses carbon in stable forms, improving its ability to regenerate and resist desertification. Studies from the University of California indicate that the addition of compost can increase soil carbon storage between 20% and 40% in a period of 10 years, contributing to the fight against the degradation of agricultural ecosystems, promotes the resilience of the agricultural ecosystem, and strengthens biodiversity. A soil enriched with compost encourages the presence of soil macrofauna, like earthworms, stinky Eisenia, which improve aeration and nutrient availability. In addition, composting practices prevent the contamination of bodies of water and reduce the impact of agriculture on biodiversity, creating more balanced and resistant environments against pests and diseases. Incorporating compost into the soil not only restores soil fertility, but also promotes a regenerative agriculture model where nutrient cycles are closed efficiently. By returning organic matter to the soil, a more sustainable, resilient production system is established, aligned with the principles of agroecology and permaculture. Ultimately, composting is a key tool to address global challenges such as the loss of fertile soils, climate change, and food security, ensuring the regeneration of ecosystems and the sustainability of agricultural communities.